All right. Welcome to the Learning and Design Mastermind Vodcast, which connects the worlds of instructional design, and many topics. I am Daisy Barreto, your host, and with me is my co-host somewhere on the screen, Sherry Conklin, and we are happy to be your guide as we explore these topics. And in each episode, we explore the latest trends, case studies, and practical experiences and tips for professionals in the field that can help you deliver a great learning experience for your learners and students. And here with us today is Gwen Fitzpatrick, and she is an alum from our program. And Gwen, could you please tell us more about your position, where you're currently working, and what do you do?
Sure. So I'm currently an instructional designer at Park University, which is in Missouri. So it's 100% remote because I still live in Wilmington. And I have actually been there for 3 years. I actually got the job in October and then graduated in December. So the program at UNCW definitely really got me ready for what I'm doing. And I work for the College of Education and Healthcare Professions is the college that I'm assigned to, but there are times where I create learning for other content areas as well.
Thank you, Gwen. And one of the things that I remember, in our conversation
Mhm.
is that you have been doing, or maybe you have been delving into a lot of like gamification. And then here's my question, and I know that the gamification is one of the things that people really they want to do it, they want to integrate in their courses. Sometimes people don't know how to do it or don't know how to do well, and we're really going to talk about like your own experience. So my
Mhm.
first question to you is, what inspired you to integrate gamification into, your instructional design projects, and what are maybe some of the benefits that you have observed so far, in your practice? What are some of the things that you've noticed that as a result of this, here are some of the things that we are noticing?
Sure. Well, it started out with the director of our digital learning team was at a conference and she went to a session about gamification and messaged me about it. And I was just really excited about it. And she said, "What if you became our gamification expert?" And I was like, okay. So I immediately went on and found, some resources that I could do. And I have gone through Sententia, which is a gamification company, so to speak. And I've completed the level 1 training, and now I'm in the process of doing level 2 certification. And I think that in our world today, everybody is so engrossed in their phone and immediate gratification that I think in online learning you really have to find creative ways to engage learners. And just because we're working with adult learners doesn't mean that they don't like to play games. Um, so I think that it's beneficial to engage people. It kind of gets them involved more and uses that active learning. So then they're not just reading text on the page, which our digital learning team has really worked hard to get away from and find ways to use more of the active learning strategies.
Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things, especially as you're mentioning that about like adult learners, like that they like playing the game, there is like, this false assumption that games are just for kids,
Mhm.
that adult learners do not like it. And I think like one of the things that is a specific need about gamification is the notion that extract game elements, so it is like, what are the things that work in games that we can implement it in an instructional setting or in an education setting to ensure that engagement on the learner. And that's the thing that I was going to ask you is like, especially in your practice and as you have been start working on your projects, uh, how do you balance it out, that educational content with the game elements? so that is not, so it's not, so it is still engaging,
Mhm.
and then the learners are still learning. But, and I think this is the part that people sometimes maybe uh it's hard for them to do, is like, so you don't overdo it. I think, like, because sometimes the people like really overdo it, and then
Mhm.
you can definitely detriment the learning on top of that. So what are maybe some of the strategies that you have used or that you have noticed that have worked for you in your setting?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to realize that you can't do a game just to do a game. That you've got to make sure that the game goes along with your objectives and it's got to be clearly connected. I think that's the probably the most important thing. And the other thing that I find has been more beneficial, because a lot of times when you say gamification, people really don't know what it is. So what we have done is we have like a digital resource hub where our professors can go in here and find different resources. So I've created a part that's all of these strategies, but we're actually calling it engagement strategies. So we've kind of taken the gamification name away. So and realized, let them know that this is engagement strategies, ways that you can get your people engaged, but you can also just take simple mechanics, like maybe using just a progress bar. If they're going through a lecture, as they go through it, just have a progress bar so that they know how much they have left, or simply doing a leaderboard, because I think we inherently like competition. I think competition is healthy for us. So you may create a leaderboard, to see how many people have completed the assignment or something. But the thing that you've got to do with a leaderboard is you've got to make sure that it doesn't stay the same all the time. It's got to be constantly updating, because if you see the same student at the top of the leaderboard all the time, you're going to get disinterested.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gwen, to sharing all that. And I think, like, one of the things that you pointed out, which I too appreciate you pointed it out, that the key needs to be how these align with the objectives. What is the purpose, right? Like, it needs to be meaningful. And I think a lot of people end up doing just like gamification for the sake of gamification. And that's
Mhm.
when sometimes the instruction strategy does not work well.
Right.
Because people just, we need to insert this here, and
Yeah, I
then
think they just want the bells and whistles.
exactly.
And that doesn't always go along with, it's not, especially with adult learners. One thing that I've learned, and that was very evident in my work at UNCW, is that adults have to know why they're doing something. It has to be relative to what they're doing. So if they're just playing a game that's going to make sounds every time they do something, they're going to get bored and probably not do it.
Exactly. And I think, like, that's the part that really, that connection, that alignment, is so important. And the other thing too that you pointed out, which I think it is important for people to notice too, is that these strategies do need to be living strategies, right? Like, they need to change, and they may need to be organic, given
Mhm.
also the learners that you have. Because you're right, if I'm seeing just like, John Doe here all the time on the top as a learner, and then I cannot reach that. It's not changing. Then it's like, why am I going to put more effort? And if Doe
Absolutely.
is going to be here all the time, like, he's going to be the top.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true.
Um, and so one of the things that I was going to ask you, especially as we are talking and discussing this, is that even though there are the benefits, maybe what are some of the challenges that you've seen when designing or implementing gamification in instructional design settings, or in that context, but also maybe what are some strategies that you think it would be helpful for people to overcome them? Like, what are
Mhm.
maybe some of the solutions that people may need to attend to?
Right. I think the biggest thing, whereas if anytime you're doing something new, is getting the buy-in. You've got people, you've got to to convince people that this is a good idea. So I think by encouraging people to use small things, like maybe having a leaderboard or a point system or a badging system, something very simple that wouldn't take a whole lot of work to incorporate, but would be small things that they could see how it would impact their learners. But that also gives you a way to collect some data and see if what you're doing is working. I think one of the best things that I have seen that works is creating a story. I think that creating a story with maybe your lecture or something so that it's a story that people can be engaged with, they can get emotionally attached to it, and that also helps with the retention. And I think that's one of the things I like doing the best is creating a story.
Thank you, Gwen. And that is so true. And that's the thing too that I was gonna kind of like ask you, especially in that process of like, what is the role that story play or that storytelling like plays into, creating really a gamified learning environment. And and then I'm thinking about like, putting, the instruction designer had, what would you tell, instructional designers that want to delve into more, okay, I really want to do this. If storytelling is impactful, how can I do that? What are some strategies that you think that people maybe should pay attention as they might have to create storytelling for a project? Or what is the best way or best strategies that you think that people maybe should be attending to, and it might not be just like one thing. It might be just like, things that people, multiple things that you've
Mhm.
seen or you've noticed that people
Mhm.
maybe need to be ready or prepare for.
I think the biggest thing is you have to have a plan. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to create a game. You've got to absolutely plan it out. Gamification certainly isn't a quicker process. If anything, it takes more work, because you really have to be very thoughtful in your plan, and you've really got to know, okay, so why do I want my students to do this? What are they supposed to do? What are they going to get from this? So you've got to be very intentional in your planning. And I think the other thing is, if you want to do gamification, there are so many sites out there that will um, give you examples, but I think start small. Do one thing, maybe include a progress bar, and see how your learners react to that. Maybe create a story, maybe take a lecture and create a story. And I'll tell you, my best friend has become AI, and I can put what um, I can ask it to create a story similar to the Wizard of Oz using this, and the story is created. That allows me to spend more time on my design and making sure that the objectives are all aligned with everything.
That's such a great strategy that you're sharing. I mean, like all these strategies that you're sharing, Gwen. And I think like, so I'm gonna just recap here for all of us. One was, testing it out and maybe like, checking what are the game elements that are going to be effective for the project that people are working on. And I do appreciate that you're talking really about like, start small, test it, check it, do that evaluation, process
Mhm.
to then see maybe this is the thing that we need to move forward, or this is definitely working and we're going to keep it. And the second thing that I heard you saying, and I do think this has been big on all our podcasts whenever you're sharing, is using AI as a collaborator. I do think that AI is here. It's not going to
Mhm.
go anywhere.
No.
And I think like, the ways that we can maximize for its purpose, right? Using it, um, thoughtfully. And then as you mentioned, like, it's not that it's going to do all for you. It is
Mhm.
you using specifically for a purpose and then
Mhm.
helping you create that story that it would take you the instructions are no longer, but now you have time to one, edit, tweak it, and still working on the design, because you do have to create those interactivities. You do need to create the engagement for the learner,
Mhm.
and etc. So, and I think, so with that said, maybe, the question that I'm going to ask you here might be redundant, or you may broaden, is um, what are what kinds of gamified elements should people maybe consider and think about to really sustain that engagement for the learners,
Mhm.
and maybe, especially when you're referring to these engaging interactive strategies, that people maybe can do, that it's in a course setting, right? Maybe even in online settings, that people sometimes don't think that they can still do that,
Mhm.
on, they need to, maybe they think, oh, I need to have this fancy game website here embedded in my Canvas course or my LMS course. But I don't know if in your experience you have used, um, you know, the regular LMS, and then start using the interactivity to gamifying a course.
We work really hard to keep as much of our content in Canvas as possible so that students do not have to go outside of it. And a lot, I would say probably 85% of my gamification has been created in PowerPoint, which I didn't. I guess I was under a rock or something, but I didn't realize that there were actually buttons that you can use in PowerPoint to link things and move to it and have a home page. And so a lot of the, like, if I've created a scavenger hunt where students can actually click on something, if I give them, say, a riddle of something that is good for this special ed student to use, where is it located, and have them click on it, then that can then send them to a slide that says, good job, you have collected, or nope, try again. So I think using PowerPoint um, has been, I think, a game changer. And I think that it also lets you know that you don't have to use Articulate or Rise or some of those more advanced tools that not everybody knows or can afford to have. So I've used, and the other thing that we use a lot is Genially, which is a free tool. There's a lot, and they have a lot of templates that you can already use for an escape room or all of those things.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it has been a tool that a lot of people are mentioned to, that it is very similar, or at least it gives you that vibe of
Mhm.
storyline and
Mhm.
captivate. Of course, what is it? In a friendly manner, and maybe,
Mhm.
you don't have a lot of those customizations that you would
Right.
have with those, but it's still, I've seen, that it's very effective in terms of engagement, because just, and then, as you mentioned, even PowerPoint does have those
Mhm.
capabilities. I think the main thing is that, as an instructional designer, you do have to map it out, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you create a PowerPoint to just link anywhere and it does not have that storytelling,
Mhm.
the tool is not going to be effective.
Yeah, like I said, it takes a lot more time to create these things than it does with just a regular e-learning module. But I think the time is well spent.
I agree, Gwen, and I think one of the things that you mentioned is because you do take the time to plan it out, to align with the
Mhm.
structures and everything. I know that we are getting close to our time, so I do have two questions. One is, especially since we talk a lot about gamification, maybe what future trends do you think we're gonna see in the field of, gamification, stress designer, or maybe just, any any things that you start seeing, that maybe we should be considering, for the future.
Well, I think that we are going to start to see a lot more gamification. I think that as our world continues to be digital, I think that we're going to have to continue to find ways to engage our learner and meet them where they are. So many students do everything on their phone. So we have to make sure that things are mobile accessible and mobile ready. And I just think that there's a way that students can apply what they've learned through these strategies, these engagement strategies. And I think that we have to be um, unafraid to try new things. And the other thing is, I think AI is we've got to get comfortable using it. And I think it is our job to teach people how to use it because, like you said, it's not going anywhere. It's kind of like when the internet first came out, everybody was very, hands off. But I mean, I think that if we teach people how to use AI, then it can be our friend.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gwen, for sharing that. And then my last question to you is, it's gonna be like, your advice, if a new educator or a new instructional designer wants to start get their feet wet with gamification, what should they consider? What thoughts and advice you would give it to them, to get ready for it.
I think that you watch as many YouTube videos about gamification as you can, watch, read as much as you can. And Sententia has a great program where you can get certified at different levels that don't take any coding experience. And it's pretty reasonably priced. So, but I think that there's a lot to be learned without having to spend any money between YouTube and different sites if you just Google gamification.
Thank you, Gwen. We truly appreciate you sharing a little bit, like, of your experience, your thoughts, on gamification. I do know that I enjoy gamification too, and I have been dabbing into it. And then I agree with you. It's not easy. It takes time. It takes planning. And it is not just one time
Right,
shot a thing. You do need to be going through that iteration and seeing the effectiveness, and making sure that the elements align with the learner and their needs,
right.
and the objectives of the course or the training that people are trying to put it out. So I do appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here and sharing a little bit more of your story. And
Thank you for inviting me. I am so glad to be here.
no, we appreciate you. We do appreciate you. So all the good lucks with
Thank you.
the gamification there. And then when you have more strategies and more stories that you want to share with us, please let us know. We would be happy to invite you over to talk more about, like, all the good things that you're doing.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.